Well, we're back with another United States Soccer Sucks video. I don't want this to become the identity of my channel, basically just making videos about how bad things are in United States soccer. But it's obvious that we have some major issues to fix and to address with soccer in the United States. Now, I'm actually pretty hopeful about where things are with the game here, specifically with the rise of the USL and the NPSL. Here in my local community of Fort Worth, Texas, we have the Fort Worth Vaqueros, and that is a local club in the NPSL. And I'm actually waiting to hear back from their GM about filming some content with our local club, and they seem to have things going pretty well. There are ultras, and the football culture surrounds the club, and they have a youth academy which does not employ pay-to-play principles, and so we have a free youth academy attached to the club. There just seems to be some positive momentum, but it's in pockets, and we're a very big country, and we just have pockets of places where we're doing things right. But in today's video, you're not here to hear me talk about the good things that are going on. We're going to listen to why U.S. soccer is failing. And this is from an American professional footballer who played in Europe. Let's get into this video.
I'm an American professional footballer who left the States at 18 to go play football in Europe. I since played in Spain, Scotland, Belgium, and Greece. I've tallied about 200 professional matches over my career, and in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 exact reasons that the US soccer system is failing players, and what actually works from what I've seen overseas. Whether you're a parent, coach, or a player, here are the things that are messed up and broken in the US soccer system, and exactly how to fix them. Before I begin, I'm Joey Ford, and I've played 200 professional matches across Europe. In Waasland Beveren, RCD Mallorca, I played against players like Neymar Jr. and Kylian Mbappe, Marco Asensio. I signed my first professional contract at 18, and where I started playing in men's football soon afterwards. I scored plenty of goals, assists, and I've signed 3 major contracts across my career. Not only that, but I've learned from some of the best coaches, trainers, physios, and others in the world. And I'm here to give my experience to you and what is broken in the US soccer system. Firstly, let's start back when I was a young player. When I was a youth player, I didn't know how to train. The coaches that I was training with also didn't know what they were doing. And what it led to was a lot of overtraining. And the problem is that we had the desire and the willpower to do the training, but we just didn't know what we were doing. This caused a lot of problems later down in my career. Overtraining is a huge problem in football. It's also a huge problem across other sports in America because coaches simply don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with this perspective. It's like this in most of our sports, not just in soccer or American football. For ease of communication, when I say football in this video, I will be referring to the gridiron sport which I played, which you can see behind me. When I say football, that's what I'm going to refer to. Even though in most of my videos, when I say football, I'm referring to, good grief, that kind of football. But I witnessed this sort of problem with coaching and training in the United States. In fact, I probably participated a little bit in this. I coached American football, and the way I was brought up in the game and played and coached was extreme. I mean, we're talking heavy overtraining to the point where we're coming into the season and you've got, key players with nagging injuries that came up through the summer, through overtraining, putting too much strain on the body during the summertime. And by the time you get to the season, a lot of times, a lot of your best players are already spent, and you have, depleted your guys just because, for some extent, coaches in our sports don't even really care about developing players for the sport so much as they are trying to morally develop young men into being good for society, being good, respectable people. And that's a great aspect of youth coaching, but some of these guys take it so far that they basically just become your dad and many times a toxic one. And they push you to the brink. I don't know how many times I was coached pretty heavy, and I've seen players. In fact, we've had American football players die in practice in Texas. That's happened. In fact, some of the years when I was playing, we had to change some of the laws around what you could and couldn't do in American football practices, because we had kids die in practice because some of the drills were so brutal, so intense, and it was supposed to be a punishment or to teach a lesson to these guys. Just a lot of times it's the coaches just trying to assert their dominance and authority over the players. A lot of that stuff happens here. It's like the coaching situation is pretty rough. You don't always have to have a license or a technical thing to be able to coach in some of these sports. And so, I've seen some bad stuff when it comes to coaching and overtraining. All right, I've gone off on a tangent. If you're still here, you're the real MVP. Smash the like button for me, because that will help me out. All right, back to the video.
We focus a great deal on the physical body, like running, hill sprints, these kind of trainings, and not enough time with the ball, focusing on football IQ and the things that are going to help a player in their future. And actually, this one is really personal to me because I suffered a lot of injuries later on in my career simply because I wasn't doing the correct training. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But what the coaches found at these clubs was that the players who were developing in the academies in Europe, their bodies were ready for the load that men's football was going to bring, whereas mine simply couldn't do it. I had to work really hard in the gym with the physios, the trainers, just to get my body ready to compete at that level. Where my teammates, they had been in the youth academies in Europe all their lives, so they were ready. Their bodies were strong, and when they tested, everything was much stronger than I was. The physios noticed about a 20 to 30% decrease in strength in my body versus my teammates, which was the problem and why I kept getting injured, because the training load was made for players who could handle that load. I was overtraining, and I still wasn't good enough, simply because I wasn't training the correct way. Let's close this now. Overtraining is detrimental to the body long term, but also not training correctly and properly can also be as detrimental. It's important to find that balance. Let's break down one of the major reasons that soccer in the USA is failing. And it has to do with our pay-to-play system.
Yeah.
As a lot of parents will tell you, they've had the...
Knew this one was coming. You guys know my perspective on pay-to-play. I've talked about it pretty extensively on the channel with other videos. So I'll probably speed through this a little bit, listen to his perspective on it.
Pay thousands and thousands of dollars just for their kid to play on the team and get the development that's necessary for them to either go to college or try to reach for the pro level. This is not the case in Europe. This is a big problem here because what it does is it limits the players that can get in simply based off the amount of money they have. So we're losing out on our best players because it's not a thing about being good enough, it's about being rich enough. And this is a problem that we're facing in the US soccer. We're losing out on a huge group of players who are good enough to be playing there. I'm gonna leave up a graphic right here where it's gonna give you the comparisons of the US soccer.
All right, let's look at this for a second. Pathway, U.S. Recreational Club, all sports average 2024. Typical annual out-of-pocket cost per child is over $1,000. Registration, basic kit, local games. Wow, okay. U.S. Competitive Travel Soccer Club can be between 1 to 10K, and that's only in California. U.S. or MLS Next Elite Academies that still charge $3,000 to $3,500. $3,000. Wow. U.S. travel player in Florida could spend up to $10K with a full season of national level events. PSG in France charges 200 euros. That is euro, right? I'm guessing that's what the text is so small over here. You might not even be able to read it. Ajax in the Netherlands, 12 euro insurance only. Everything else is free. That is crazy, man. The Premier League Category 1 academies is free. Parents pay nothing. But look at over here in the United States. You can spend almost $10,000 per kid to play at a high level on our academies. And that just destroys your pool of talent. Like, where are you going to pull the best players from? How are you going to scout players? You could literally have one of, the greatest players to ever play playing in a field somewhere with his buddies, but he can't afford to get on the squad. We've talked a lot about it on the channel, so we'll go ahead and keep
versus Europe academies, and what you have to pay for the development of your players. And even then, you're not getting the correct development. First, you're going to read that on average, you pay $1,000 per player for the year just to be there and play at a recreational level. And this covers things like registration, kits, and traveling to games. But the real problem happens when you get into US travel soccer, where you're traveling all over the country to play games. This is the level where scouts are at from colleges, and it's actually a necessity for your players to be there if they want to go to college. And that is a huge problem, because now you're looking at the richest players and not the best players. You're looking up sometimes at up to $10,000 in fees. This is covering travel, airplane tickets, hotels, food, and these kind of things. It's absurd the amount of money that players have to pay to get development. Then, when you look at a club like PSG in Europe and their academy, they're looking at paying around 200 euros, which is around 250 US dollar. And at the English Premier League clubs, like Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, there's a zero fee for their players. They're playing for free. This way, they can get the best players possible and develop them. That means the parents are paying nothing for the highest standard of training that is possible. This is what separates the American players from those in Europe. Now, it's not only me who's saying this. There's parents all over the world, and I'm gonna leave up a few tweets that I found where they're talking about overhauling the entire system, because this is not possible. This leads us to many problems down the road where we're not able to compete on the world level.
I was mentioning this, and I said I wasn't going to pause a lot during this section, but I was mentioning this at the beginning. We actually do have pockets where we're doing this correctly. And specifically in my community, we're doing this right with having, free entry into the youth academy and some of these smaller clubs. And so one of the major problems, though, is the travel cost. Because even if you were able to develop a system where, players can play for very cheap fees comparable to Europe, you still, because our country's so vast, there's so much travel. What you would need would be the sport to have such a cultural stronghold in the United States that you don't have to travel that far. So you're not having to pay for plane tickets you're not having to pay for the travel to go out of state to play in tournaments or to play in games that have long distances. If you have such a cultural foothold that every community has clubs, that you don't have to travel out of state to play against good competition. You can be scouted right here in your little region playing against clubs in your area. We don't have that yet. We don't have the buy-in culturally yet to have clubs set up at this level, which is crazy because, it's kind of like the thing that you talk about. It's in all of our movies. It's in all of our entertainment. We talk about, oh yeah, I got to take the kids to soccer practice. That happens all the time. Like in American movies and TV shows, we talk about taking the kids to soccer practice, but we never stop to talk about how there's just no cultural buy-in to the game. It's a thing that you take your kids to do almost to get them some sort of social status or to show that you have the money to put them in a rich club. It's not really something that happens organically for the love of the game, because we want to develop the kids to be the best player they can be. This video is going to take forever if I talk this much.
Because players in the other countries are simply better than we are. It doesn't matter what kind of training we are doing if you don't have the best players. If you only have the richest players, then you're simply not going to make it. Because the best players are the hidden gems, and they might not have the financial stability and ability to go and play at these high-level teams. I remember when I was a youth player, and it was extremely expensive for my parents just to get me to travel to games. They were spending around $500 per week just to get me to these games. And at that time, we were covering for other players who were not rich enough or had enough money to do the things that they wanted to do, but were good enough to be there. So I know that there's many more players who are out there who are struggling to get the opportunities simply because they don't have enough money. This is a problem that American soccer is facing, and it is one of our biggest problems. And you'll notice from this one right here, that they're talking about prices still going up. But things are getting even more expensive here in America. It's crazy that you have to pay $2,000 for a player to go play on a football team. This is crazy, and this is not sustainable in the long term. We're getting the richest kids and not the most athletic. Also, I'm going to read through this tweet right here because he's a guy who is living in Scotland, in Germany, in Europe. He's giving firsthand evidence of what's going on overseas versus here in America. So he says, yes, I know this was our B team, but in my opinion, there's a fundamental problem with USU soccer. I just recently moved back to the US after living in Germany and Scotland. My son played soccer in Germany and Scotland, and he now plays pre-ECNL in America. There are major differences in soccer here than in Europe. Basically, soccer here in America is a business first, and everything else after that, second. The pay-to-play model pushes so many families out who simply can't afford to keep up. And here are some examples. He then goes on to list some examples. He says, in Germany, private training at an indoor pitch was €30 per session for 1 hour, which is about $35. In Germany, there are loads of indoor soccer pitches that anyone can rent for €30 an hour. This means I could rent a pitch for my son's entire group of friends, and they could play small-sided scrimmages weekly for little to no cost. In Scotland, his select team was £250 for the year. This included team kits, training kits, team jumpers, and balls for training, which was 3 times a week. In Scotland, small group training sessions, less than 5 kids in a group, was £65 per month for 2 trainings per week. Without reading too much of this tweet, you already get the idea that he understands firsthand what's going on in Europe versus here in America. The problem is that things are way overpriced and the development is simply not there. Players are not getting enough of the quality development that they need to go to that next level. And I know this firsthand. Without diving too deep into that, let's move on to the next topic, which is after 18 years old, there's no real pathway into professional soccer. The players kind of get stuck. If you don't go to college or you don't get a scholarship, you're kind of out of the loop. But in Europe, there's actually a real path for you. You can reach into the lower divisions of professional football, and you can get a job elsewhere, and you can continue to develop yourself and work harder until you're around 24, 25, where you can even sign a professional contract. Here, that's just simply not the case. We don't have options for our players past 18. If you don't go to college and sign a Division I scholarship, you don't really have the opportunity to make it into MLS, for example. It's a real struggle, and players are under the pressure and timing of life because they're not able to develop as quick as possible in order to get to that level. And I know this firsthand because I had multiple full ride scholarships to the biggest schools here in America. The problem was that I had to develop outside of training and on my own. But we'll talk about that a bit later. But for me, the path was a bit risky because I decided at 18 to turn down those scholarships and pursue a career in Europe, whereas I could not pursue that career in the States. Which leads me to the next topic in this video, which is all about the things that I learned in Europe that helped me to be the player that I am today, and that I'm using to help parents, coaches, and players all over America who have the goal and dream to be a professional footballer or to sign to a Division I school. Firstly, number 1, training at these professional academies in Europe simply brings a peace of mind because you finally understand that there's a standard that has to be met each and every day and that you don't need to overtrain or that you're not undertraining. The whole thing is mapped out for you. You just simply show up to the training ground, you have the best training in the gym, the best training on the pitch, you're developing your football IQ, and all of these things combined and give you a peace of mind that your future is going to be good if you're good enough and you're talented enough. This is not the case for players in America, where the players are overpaying and being underdeveloped. They're not getting the football IQ, they're not getting the gym sessions, they're not getting the proper training outside of the pitch that's going to help them be the player that they need to be. There's more to being a footballer than what happens on the pitch. American coaches simply don't understand that because they're just there for a paycheck. Imagine for a second that the standard is set and that you're in a community with a bunch of group of guys, players, who have the same thing in mind to play professional or to reach the D1 level. And all you have to do is continue to push each other and you can reach that standard and that level. This is the thing and the truth about professional academies in Europe, and that's what separates them from the US. Another thing that I learned being inside and what is unknown to those around me is that these academy players are simply just normal kids. They're just like your child. They're just getting the proper training and the standard is set for them while they're at work. At work, for example. When they show up to the training ground, they know they have the gym, they have to go to the pitch, they have to train, they have to focus on film. They have their standards set. But as soon as they step out of the field, they're normal kids again. You know, they go to the movies with their girlfriend or their boyfriend, they're hanging around with their friends, they're, They're laughing, they're joking, they're going to parties. They're normal kids. Just the only thing is that their standard is set at the training ground. And that's what helps them become the players that they're supposed to be. They're just simply training correctly when the time is right. They're not overtraining or undertraining. They're simply doing what is asked of them. Another thing I learned quick.
That is crazy to say. I'm pausing for one more time here. A lot of people who play sports at that level in the United States on travel teams, no matter what sport you're talking about, they don't have the same kind of normal life because they are overworked. It's expensive. Parents put too much stock in their performance. They get stressed out and anxious. You kind of miss out. I'll speak from personal experience. My sister played travel volleyball for a club team, and she was very good. And it was very expensive for my family to be able to put her through that. But they kept taking her to it because she loved it. But towards the end, she started to burn out because they're overworking them, they're overtraining them, and the deliverable isn't there. They don't get to live the normal life. Their entire existence is to eat, sleep, and breathe the sport. And to some extent, if you're going to be driven to be the best at whatever sport you do, you got to have some of that where that's all you do. You breathe football, or you breathe whatever sport you play. But you gotta let kids live their life, and like he said, set their standard at the training ground. When you're training hard. But when you're not training, you're living a normal life. We're not overtraining you or stretching your life so thin to where the only thing you can ever think about is your performance.
Was that most academy players at this European level, they still don't play men's football. They're still not becoming professionals. And that's because the standard is high, even for them. There's only a few guys from each of these clubs who can break into first-team football and play men's football. So if they're able to do it, there's something that you have to learn from them. And that's what these academies are about. They're all about developing the players so they're able to sell them. Their business is on the back end, whereas in America, the business is on the front end. They're demanding money from players up front, whereas the professional academies are demanding it after. This is what separates as well, because they know that only a few of these players from the academies are going to make it into men's football, and that they're going to be able to sell them for profit. You have to remember that the football world is a business world, and that they make money by selling you. They make money by developing the players and selling them. And that's what's not happening in America. They're using you for money, and they understand that they don't need to develop you because they don't have any financial burden if you don't make it. But in Europe, their main objective...
That's an angle I hadn't even considered. I know somebody mentioned something about this in the comments, and I didn't stew on it long enough. It's really clicking with me right now. That the whole point is develop a good player so that you get to earn a fee off of them for the remainder of their career. I do think we brought this up in one of my last videos, but it hasn't fully metabolized for me. I haven't really thought deeply about that point. Man. So it radically changes the way you even approach developing players for any sport. Because the club that gets to develop the next superstar gets to profit for their club for the remainder of that player's career. They get to sell the rights for other clubs to use the player that they developed. Whereas in our system, as long as the parents are rich enough to pay us, we'll coach their kids, but we're not really fueling them or developing their career so that we can earn potentially so much money off of their professional career. So their success fuels our success. So many aspects to this pay to play that I haven't even really fully understood. I mean, I understood there's a problem, but I haven't really fully grasped it.
Is to develop a player so that they can sell them. The next thing I learned playing in Europe versus in America. When I left to Europe at 18, I knew that nothing was going to be given to me. At 18 years old, I moved from America, for my comfort, for my house, into a small little apartment where I ate rice and beans each day, and I was on a small little contract. I'll give the details away right now that I was earning €400 per month at my first contract at 18. It was barely enough money, and I had to get rides for my teammates to get to training. But this was the struggle and that the thing that I needed to push myself to become a full-time professional and accomplish my dreams. After that, I signed 3 major deals, which took care of me and my family later on. But I knew that at the beginning that nothing was going to be given to me. I had to fight for everything that I had. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think that when you go over there and you sign to a professional academy, that everything's just going to be good and great. But actually, what separates them is that they have the mental toughness and the fortitude to separate the external from what's happening inside at the training ground. Life is not easy for these players as well. They have struggles, they have difficulties, but they show up to the training ground and they find that energy to get themselves out of that situation. And that's what doesn't happen here in America. One of the biggest things that I learned also was that European kids are simply built into the system. From the same ages of 6, 7, 8, all the way up into men's football, they're already in the system that we're following at the men's level, at the professional level. They travel with the team, they train in the gym, they eat meals at the field. They understand the world of football from a young age. But that was the thing for me. When I was coming in to Europe as an American, it was all a culture shock for me. I didn't understand any of it. What do you mean we eat at the training ground? What do you mean we watch film after? The gym. We take a nap, then we go and we do the gym session, or we do the pitch session, or we have double sessions. It just didn't make sense to me. But these kids are just simply grown into this system, and nothing is a surprise to them. Nothing is a problem for them. It's so simple for them just to step into men's football from the academy levels. And that's the thing that we don't have here in America. In America, it's a struggle just to get players to understand this whole system of how we do things, because there really isn't a system. It's either you pay a lot of money to go play at a youth team, or you don't get to play at all. It's simply not correct, and it's not right. The last 2 things that I learned was that mentality is everything. Moving over there at 18, having to eat different food, speak a different language. When I went into the Spanish locker room, they wouldn't even speak English with me. They had a bit of pride about them that they wanted me to speak Spanish and speak their language. And fair enough, because I'm in their country. I should adapt to their culture. It's truth. But it was so difficult as a young man to go over there and adapt to their language, to their food, to not having a car, to living in a different apartment, to being in a different time zone than my family. But I understood quickly that it wasn't the best players from the US who were going to play professional football. It was the ones that could handle the mental stress outside of football. These things that weighed on you heavily, like missing your family, those things were the crucial differentiators that separated me from the others. And I feel like these things are not being built in American football players. We don't have the struggle there because the kids who are playing soccer are either the richest or they're the nerds, as that tweet said. These are the things that we need to pay attention to. That are we developing the mentality that is necessary for the players to play at a high level? You have to understand, when you're playing against these players in Europe, these are the things that they've had to deal with all their lives. So what I'll say is the best careers go to the most resilient and not always the most flashiest. These players who are playing at the highest level had to deal with many trials and traumas to be there. Lastly, which is a personal topic and what I told you I was going to bring up, was that my body simply was not ready for the professional game. And it hurt me. When I first moved into Belgium, where the level jumped, where I was in 2nd division of Greece and I moved into 1st division of Belgium, my body could not keep up. After I'd play a match, we had training the next day, and my body it was so sore and so beat up. And I was asking my teammates, how are you not feeling sore? How are you not feeling tired? And they were just like, I don't know. They were running the same amount as me. They were fighting in the pitch for 90 minutes, same thing as me, but their bodies just weren't breaking down like mine were. And quickly after that, that's when I had my first hamstring problem. It wasn't a full tear, but it was like a major cramp. It's like my body was not strong enough and fit enough to handle the load that my teammates were handling. These guys grew up in professional academies all their lives, and they were in the gym doing the correct exercises. They were doing exercises to strengthen their hamstrings, to strengthen their adductors, their quads. These things made a difference at that level, and it cost me a lot of time, and I'll say as money as well, because that was my career. Every time a football player gets pulled out of a game, is injured or misses a training week or misses a game, they lose money, they lose time, they lose trust from the coaches. And these things happened to me and they hurt me. So the biggest thing that I found was that doing the correct training in the gym as well as in the pitch is the thing that's separating them. because these players are able to stay in the game for 90 minutes all season long. Whereas I struggled many years with injuries, nagging pains, simply because my body was trying to catch up. If I was training correctly when I was a young player in the gym, doing the correct exercises, I would have been ready for what is happening in the European football. But I simply wasn't. I was simply overtraining, doing too much work, working for too long, and not getting the results that I desired. I definitely learned that the hard way, and it's exactly why I'm creating E4 Elite to help you guys not go through the same mistakes that I went through. This leads me to the last topic. Well, then what should I do as a US player? How can I develop myself? How can I get the growth that I need? You find guys like me who are willing to help you. I have all the experience in the world now of playing at the European level, of playing at the highest levels of football, and I'm here to give it away to you guys. That's what's most important to me, is that you guys learn from my mistakes.
Gotcha. So I think, yeah, he's going to sell his course here, I guess. Let's see.
To make a difference. My individual training is what separates me from everybody else. And it's important that you're getting the correct training. It doesn't happen inside the team. It happens at home. It happens when you're alone at home and you have individual training sessions with your son or daughter. This is what makes the difference, and that's what's going to help you reach your dreams and your goals. Here's again my apology to the parents for having to pay this amount of money for underdevelopment, for a system that's failing you, but simply because you need to help your players reach their goals and their dreams. So if you guys like this content, consider subscribing.
All right. Apologize for that weird cut there at the end. If you would go ahead and subscribe to E4 Elite, really appreciate this video. Well done. Learned a lot. You guys probably learned nothing from my yapping, but I appreciate you guys, every one of you, for still showing up and watching my videos and supporting the channel. I don't know why so many people have decided to watch my videos. I really don't, but I appreciate every single one of you. And if you're still here, man, smash the like button for me. Really consider hitting the like button for me. It actually really helps my videos do super well. I'll see you guys in the next one.